Welcome, dear listeners. We are diving through the sweeping history of the Ottoman Empire, a realm that wove together the vibrant threads of three continents, blending cultures, faiths, and traditions into a tapestry of power that endured for over 600 years. Picture yourself gliding gently on a wooden caique along the Bosphorus, the cool waters lapping softly against the hull under a canopy of twinkling stars, whispering ancient tales of sultans, janissaries, poets, and merchants who crafted an empire of enduring wonders. Let's drift through time, from the nomadic camps of Central Asia to the opulent palaces of Istanbul, with stories of conquest, wisdom, and resilience to lull you into peaceful reflection. Settle in, let the world fade, and allow the Ottoman saga to unfold like a richly embroidered carpet, each thread revealing the secrets of an empire that thrived through centuries of triumph and challenge. Our journey begins far from the marble domes of Istanbul in the vast windswept steppes of Central Asia during the 11th century, where the Oghuz Turks roamed as nomads, their lives shaped by the rhythms of the seasons and the relentless demands of survival. These hardy people, descendants of ancient horsemen who had traversed the Eurasian plains for generations, lived in harmony with their environment, moving across grasslands teeming with wild horses, grazing sheep, and sturdy goats. They dwelt in felt yurts, portable tents stitched from wool and supported by wooden frames, which could be packed onto camels or carts in hours to follow fresh pastures or escape encroaching threats. Their society was organized into clans and tribes, led by beys, chieftains chosen for their courage in battle, wisdom in resolving disputes over grazing lands, and ability to provide for their people during harsh winters or droughts. Turkic warriors honed their skills in archery on horseback, firing arrows with deadly precision while galloping across the steppes, a technique that made them formidable in warfare. Women were the backbone of the community, weaving intricate carpets and textiles adorned with geometric patterns, spirals, stars, and animal motifs that narrated stories of ancestry, migrations, and mythical heroes. Children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk, preparing for a life of mobility and resilience, while also tending to lambs or practicing with small bows crafted from horn and sinew. Evenings around crackling campfires were times of cultural transmission, as elders recited oral epics of legendary figures like Oghuz Khan, their voices rising and falling against the backdrop of howling winds, accompanied by the haunting melodies of dombra strings or the rhythmic tapping of wooden spoons. The Turks' spiritual life blended ancient shamanistic rituals, honoring the sky god Tengri with offerings of milk poured onto sacred stones or meat burned in fires, with the emerging influence of Islam, adopted by many tribes after contact with Arab and Persian traders along the Silk Road. Their diet was simple yet sustaining. Flatbreads, baked on hot stones, fermented mare's milk called kumis, sipped from leather pouches, and roasted mutton shared in communal feasts under the stars. By the 13th century, this nomadic world was shattered by the cataclysmic Mongol invasions led by Genghis Khan and his successors, whose armies swept through Central Asia, burning cities, slaughtering populations, and scattering tribes like leaves in a storm. Fleeing this chaos, one group under the leadership of Ertugrul Ghazi, a devout and valiant bey, embarked on an arduous journey westward, seeking refuge in Anatolia, a rugged peninsula of mountains, valleys, and coastal plains bridging Europe and Asia. Arriving around 1230, Ertugrul pledged his loyalty to the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, a powerful Turkish state that had flourished since its victory over the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, opening Anatolia to Islamic settlement and Turkic migration. Ertugrul's warriors, armed with composite bows and curved swords, fought alongside the Seljuks against Byzantine raiders and Mongol scouts, proving their valor in skirmishes across rocky highlands. In gratitude, Sultan Alauddin Kikubad granted Ertugrul lands near Sogut, a modest town in northwestern Anatolia nestled in a fertile valley surrounded by forested hills. Here, Ertugrul's tribe began transitioning to a semi-sedentary life, planting wheat, barley, and lentils in the rich, loamy soil irrigated by mountain streams, while continuing to herd goats and sheep on the slopes, their bells tinkling in the crisp air. Sogut's community thrived on cooperation and faith. They built simple stone houses with flat roofs, where families gathered to share meals of bread, yogurt, and dried fruits. Small mosques, constructed from local timber and stone, served as centers for Friday prayers, where imams preached Sunni Islam infused with Sufi mysticism, emphasizing spiritual purity and devotion to a higher purpose. Ertugrul mediated disputes among clans with fairness, drawing on Islamic teachings to settle conflicts over land or marriage dowries, and organized Khaza raids, holy wars, against Byzantine villages to secure resources and expand territory. His wife, Halima Hatun, was a pillar of strength, managing household affairs, raising their children, including the future Osman, and weaving textiles that adorned their home with patterns of stars and vines. Daily life was vibrant. Women spun wool into yarn for clothing and rugs. Men crafted leather saddles and bows in open-air workshops, and children played with wooden tops or chased each other through olive groves, their laughter echoing in the valley. Ertugrul's leadership fostered unity as he forged alliances through marriages and shared feasts where roasted lamb was served with flat bread and songs of valor filled the night. His death around 1280 was deeply mourned, and his tomb in Sogut became a sacred pilgrimage site, adorned with intricate carpets, silver oil lamps, and offerings from followers who revered him as a Ghazi leader, a warrior for faith and justice. His legacy laid the foundation for a dynasty that would reshape the world. Ertugrul's son, Osman I, born around 1258, inherited this frontier beylik, a small principality perched on the edge of the declining Byzantine Empire, weakened by internal strife and external pressures. Osman, a charismatic Ghazi warrior with a burning zeal for jihad, rallied a diverse coalition. Turkmen nomads seeking new pastures, Byzantine defectors disillusioned with their emperor's rule, and adventurers drawn by tales of opportunity, with visions of a unified Islamic state that would bring justice and prosperity. His early raids targeted vulnerable Byzantine outposts, employing guerrilla tactics, ambushes in dense forests, swift night attacks on sleeping villages, and feigned retreats to lure enemies into traps. These operations captured livestock, slaves, and fortified towns, expanding the beylik's territory and attracting more warriors to Osman's banner. In 1299, as the Seljuk Sultanate crumbled under Mongol invasions, Osman boldly declared independence, founding the Ottoman dynasty, named Osmanli in his honor. This act marked the birth of the empire, though it was then just one of many rival beyliks vying for dominance in Anatolia. Osman's marriages were strategic masterstrokes. His union with Malihun Hatun, daughter of a prominent Sufi sheikh, cemented ties with religious leaders whose influence rallied spiritual support, while his marriage to Rabia Bala Hatun forged alliances with neighboring tribes, securing resources and loyalty. A legendary dream, recounted by the revered Sheikh Edebali, saw a mighty tree sprouting from Osman's chest, its roots plunging deep into the earth and its branches shading Constantinople and distant lands, with swords hanging from leaves like fruits of conquest. Interpreted as a divine promise of eternal empire, this vision inspired Osman's followers and became a foundational myth of Ottoman destiny. Osman governed with simplicity and pragmatism, appointing qadis, Islamic judges, to administer Sharia law in village squares or under shaded tents, settling disputes with wisdom drawn from the Quran. Taxes were collected in kind, sacks of grain from bountiful harvests, bolts of woven cloth, and livestock from herders to fund his growing army and support the needy. His capture of Bilecik in 1299 was a triumph of cunning. His men, disguised as merchants with carts of goods, surprised the hilltop fortress's garrison, seizing control and its strategic position. Markets in Sogut buzzed with activity as traders bartered furs from the northern forests for spices caravanned from the east. Artisans hammered copper into ornate trays and ewers, and evenings featured Mevlit recitations praising the Prophet Muhammad, accompanied by the haunting melodies of ney flutes and the rhythmic beats of davul drums. Women spun wool into vibrant threads, children practiced archery with small bows, and communal feasts strengthened bonds, with stories of Osman's raids spreading his fame. Osman's death in 1324, shortly after the capture of Bursa, passed the leadership to his son Orhan, leaving a Beylik poised for greater conquests. Orhan Ghazi, ascending at the age of 43, transformed the Beylik into a structured and ambitious state, building on his father's legacy with a blend of military prowess, diplomatic acumen, and administrative innovation. His first major achievement was completing the siege of Bursa in 1326, a key Byzantine city that had withstood Ottoman pressure for years. After a prolonged blockade that cut off supplies and exhausted its defenders, Bursa surrendered, and Orhan entered triumphantly, converting its grand Byzantine church into the Ulu Cami Mosque, where the call to prayer echoed from newly constructed minarets piercing the sky. Bursa became the capital, its fertile valley surrounded by mountains, making it an ideal center for trade, agriculture, and governance. Orhan minted the first Ottoman coins, small silver akisi stamped with his name and Islamic inscriptions, symbolizing economic independence and facilitating commerce in bustling markets. He organized the military more formally, dividing it into paid Yaya infantry and Musellem cavalry, and introduced the Timar system, granting land fiefs to soldiers in exchange for military service. This system encouraged settlement, as warriors became farmers, cultivating wheat and olives on their estates, and ensured loyalty without burdening the treasury with salaries, laying the groundwork for a sustainable empire. Orhan's diplomatic marriage to Theodora, daughter of Byzantine Emperor John VI Cantacuzene in 1346, was a masterstroke, sealing an alliance amid Byzantine civil wars and bringing Christian auxiliary troops into Ottoman service, enhancing legitimacy through ties to the ancient empire. Conquests under Orhan continued unabated. Iznik, ancient Nicaea, fell in 1331. Its formidable walls breached by siege engines and persistent assaults, followed by Izmit, Nicomedia, in 1337, opening crucial paths to the Sea of Marmara and enabling naval ambitions with the construction of small galleys for coastal raids and trade protection. Orhan invested in education, establishing madrasas in Bursa, where scholars taught fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, hadith, prophetic traditions, poetry, and astronomy, fostering an intellectual class to support the state's expansion. Bursa's silk industry boomed under his patronage, with mulberry groves planted along the hills, silkworms nurtured in shaded sheds, and threads woven into luxurious brocades and kaftans exported to Venice, Genoa, and Persia, bringing wealth to the capital. Daily life in Bursa reflected a vibrant blend of cultures. Merchants from across the Mediterranean haggled in covered bazaars over spices like saffron, dyes like indigo, and textiles woven with gold thread. Hammam baths in natural thermal springs offered relaxation, with steaming pools and massages, and festivals featured traditional wrestling matches, archery contests, and shadow puppet shows narrating heroic tales of Ghazi warriors. Women wove intricate rugs sold in markets. Men crafted leather goods and pottery, and children attended Quran schools, memorizing verses under the shade of plane trees. Orhan's death in 1362 marked the end of an era of consolidation, passing the throne to his son Murad I, with the empire's gaze turning toward the European continent. Murad I, ascending in 1362, at the age of 36, shifted the empire's focus decisively toward Europe, capitalizing on the Byzantine Empire's weakening grip and the fragmented state of Balkan principalities. His reign began with consolidating Anatolian holdings, but a pivotal moment came with the crossing of the Dardanelles Strait in 1354, initiated under Orhan but expanded under Murad, where Ottoman forces aided a Byzantine faction in civil war but established permanent settlements on the European side at Gallipoli. The port town became a military base, its docks bustling with ships ferrying troops, horses, and supplies across the strait, transforming it into a launch pad for ambitious Balkan campaigns. In 1369, Murad captured Adrianople after a determined siege, renaming it Edirne and declaring it the new capital. Its strategic location closer to the European frontiers, allowing for swift military responses and better control over newly conquered territories. Edirne's markets soon thrived, trading Slavic slaves from the north, Hungarian swords and armor bartered in border fairs, and Anatolian wool spun into fine yarns for export. Murad formalized the Janissary Corps around 1363 through the Devshirme system, levying young Christian boys from Balkan villages, converting them to Islam, and training them in specialized semi-Oglan barracks. These recruits underwent rigorous education in the Turkish language, the Quran, and martial arts, practicing archery on open fields, horsemanship on rugged terrains, and swordplay in mock battles, becoming an elite, celibate infantry loyal solely to the Sultan. Clad in distinctive white balks, felt hats, and blue tunics, the Janissaries carried curved swords and muskets, forming the empire's most disciplined force. Murad's conquests were relentless. Thrace fell town by town, with cities like Philippopolis, modern Plovdiv, surrendering after prolonged blockades that starved out defenders. Macedonia followed, with the Battle of Maritsa in 1371 crushing a combined Serbian and Bulgarian army, many of whom drowned in the river during a chaotic retreat under a hail of Ottoman arrows. Murad imposed vassalage on the Byzantine emperors, who were forced to pay tribute in gold and supply auxiliary troops for Ottoman campaigns, effectively reducing the once mighty empire to a tributary state. In Anatolia, Murad annexed the beyliks of Jermian and Hamid through strategic marriages and military campaigns, consolidating power and resources from the Danube River in the west to the Euphrates in the east. The empire's administration grew more sophisticated under Murad. The Grand Vizier, a chief advisor, coordinated the Divan Council's meetings in Edirne's ornate palaces or tented pavilions during campaigns, where officials discussed strategy, taxation, and justice over refreshing glasses of rosewater sherbet. The economy diversified, with silver mines in newly conquered Kosovo yielding precious metal for minting coins, rice paddies in Thrace producing surplus for export to Constantinople, and guilds in cities like Bursa regulating crafts such as leather tanning and pottery, ensuring quality through strict standards. Daily life in Edirne buzzed with activity. Merchants in covered bazaars sold Persian carpets, Venetian glass, and Damascus steel blades. Women embroidered intricate patterns on silk veils, and children played with kites in open squares, their laughter mingling with the calls of street vendors hawking roasted chestnuts. The pivotal Battle of Kosovo in 1389 epitomized Murad's reign. His army of 30,000 troops, including Janissaries, Sepahi cavalry, and Akinci scouts, faced a Christian coalition of Serbs, Bosnians, and Albanians led by Prince Lazar. The battle began at dawn, with Ottoman archers raining arrows on enemy lines, followed by heavy cavalry charges that broke the Serbian center. Despite the victory, Murad was assassinated in his tent by Milos Obilic, a Serbian knight who feigned defection to gain access. Murad's son, Bayezid, swiftly avenged him, executing Lazar and many captives, securing the field, and cementing Ottoman dominance in the Balkans. The battle became a mythic event. Ottomans celebrated it as a divine triumph, while Serbs remembered it as a tragic stand for Christianity, inspiring centuries of folklore and national identity. Murad's legacy was an empire doubled in size, with a professional army and a robust administrative framework that set the stage for further conquests. Bayezid was known as Yildirim, or the Thunderbolt, for his lightning-fast campaigns, ruled from 1389 to 1402, ascending amid the chaos of Kosovo's aftermath. He immediately executed his younger brothers to prevent rival claims to the throne, a brutal practice that would later be formalized as fratricide to ensure stability. Bayezid's reign was marked by rapid expansion. In Anatolia, he subdued rival beyliks like Aden, Saruhan, and Menteşe through swift military strikes, using early artillery, primitive cannons firing stone balls to breach fortified walls, and incorporating their warriors into his forces. In Europe, he conquered Bulgaria in 1393, annexing the kingdom of Vidin after a siege where Ottoman riverboats blockaded supplies along the Danube and defeated Wallachian forces at Rovine in 1394, extending influence to the Carpathian Mountains. Bayezid's most ambitious endeavor was the prolonged siege of Constantinople from 1394 to 1402, where he constructed the Anadolu Hisari fortress on the Asian shore of the Bosphorus to strangle Byzantine trade routes, reducing the city to near starvation. His court in Edirne glittered with cultural patronage. Poets composed elegant ghazals in Persian-influenced Turkish. Musicians played the oud and kanun during lavish banquets, and the harem expanded with concubines from conquered lands, introducing diverse customs and languages. Bayezid refined the Timar system, granting larger estates to loyal commanders, and encouraged conversion to Islam among Balkan nobility by offering tax exemptions and military positions in integrating them into the empire's fabric. However, Bayezid's hubris led to his downfall. Challenging Timur Tamerlane, the Mongol conqueror, claiming descent from Genghis Khan, Bayezid marched east with 85,000 troops, but was outmaneuvered at the Battle of Ankara in 1402 by Timur's 140,000-strong army, which included war elephants and elite horsemen. Timur's tactics, feigned retreats and flanking attacks, devastated Ottoman forces, and Bayezid was captured. Legend claims he was paraded in a golden cage, though historical accounts suggest he was treated with respect initially but committed suicide in 1403 from despair. The defeat plunged the empire into the interregnum, 1402 to 1413, a chaotic civil war among Bayezid's sons, Suleiman in Europe, Isa in Bursa, Mehmed in Amasya, and Musa in Balıkesir, as Timur partitioned Anatolia among restored beyliks. The interregnum was a dark period of fragmentation, with brothers fighting bitterly. Suleiman allied with Byzantines to hold Thrace, while Mehmed battled Timur's puppets in Anatolia. Civil strife ravaged the land, with armies pillaging villages, famine spreading as crops were burned, and trade routes halting as caravans were looted. Mehmed I emerged victorious at the Battle of Kamurlu in 1413, defeating Musa with support from Byzantine and Serbian allies, reuniting the empire under his rule. Known as Celebi for his cultured demeanor, Mehmed rebuilt devastated regions, restoring mosques like Bursa's Green Mosque, its turquoise tiles and intricate arabesques glowing in the sunlight, and patronizing scholars who translated Persian classics into Turkish, fostering a literary renaissance. Daily life slowly recovered. Farmers returned to fields, sowing barley and grapes. Artisans resumed crafting pottery and metalwork, and markets reopened, trading wool, honey, and imported spices. Mehmed's son Murad II, succeeding in 1421 at age 17, faced immediate rebellions. His uncle Mustafa and younger brother Mustafa claimed the throne with Byzantine backing, but Murad crushed them ruthlessly, executing the pretenders to secure his rule. European crusades posed greater threats. In 1443, Hungarian King John Hunyadi invaded with a coalition army, capturing Nice and Sofia. But Murad's counteroffensive at the Battle of Varna in 1444 turned the tide. Janissaries held the line against a desperate charge, killing Polish King Vladislav and routing the Crusaders, their banners left scattered on the battlefield. Murad abdicated in favor of his 12-year-old son, Mehmed II, in 1444, retiring to Manisa for a life of poetry and contemplation. But Janissary unrest and another crusade forced his return. The Second Battle of Kosovo in 1448 saw Murad defeat Hunyadi again, with Ottoman artillery decimating Hungarian knights, solidifying Balkan control. Murad II's reign was marked by architectural patronage, including Edirne's Usi Serafeli Mosque, with its innovative three-balconied minaret, symbolizing the call to prayer reaching farther horizons. He supported the arts, with miniature painters illustrating historical chronicles on parchment, and Sufi orders like the Mevlevis, whose whirling dervishes performed in tekees to achieve spiritual ecstasy. Daily life under Murad reflected growing prosperity. Caravanserais along trade routes offered safe rest for merchants carrying silk from China, spices from India, and amber from the Baltic. Villages produced olive oil, wine, and cheese for export, and festivals featured horse races and poetry recitals under lantern-lit tents. Murad's death in 1451 left the throne to Mehmed II, poised for the empire's most iconic conquest. Mehmed II, known as Fatih or the Conqueror, reascended in 1451 at age 19. Consumed by ambition to capture Constantinople, the Byzantine capital, and a prize coveted for centuries, he prepared meticulously, building the Rumeli Hisari fortress on the Bosphorus's European shore in 1452, opposite Anatolia, Hisari, to control the strait and cut off Black Sea supplies to the city. Hungarian cannon maker Urban forged massive bombards, 127 feet long, firing 1,500-pound stone balls over a mile, tested on fields outside Edirne. Assembling an army of 80,000 elite Janissaries, Timar holding Sipahis, and irregular Bashi bazooks, and a fleet of 125 ships, the siege began on April 6, 1453. Byzantine defenses, manned by 7,000 soldiers under Emperor Constantine XI, relied on the formidable Theodosian walls and a massive chain across the Golden Horn harbor to block naval entry. Mehmed's bombards pounded the walls relentlessly, creating breaches repaired nightly by desperate defenders. In a stroke of genius, Mehmed ordered 70 galleys dragged overland on greased logs from the Bosphorus to the Golden Horn, bypassing the chain and attacking from an unexpected angle. Fierce fighting ensued, with janissaries scaling walls on ladders amid boiling oil and Greek fire hurled from above. On May 29th, after 53 days, a final assault breached the gates. Constantine died fighting in the streets, his body later identified by purple boots. Mehmed entered the city victorious at 21, entering Hagia Sophia and declaring it a mosque, though preserving its Christian mosaics as a gesture of tolerance. Mehmed proclaimed Istanbul the capital, granting religious freedom to Greeks and appointing Gennadios II as patriarch to administer the Orthodox community under the Milite system, which allowed non-Muslims autonomy in religion and law in exchange for a jizya tax. He repopulated Istanbul with settlers from across the empire, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and Armenians, transforming it into a cosmopolitan hub, building the Fatih Mosque complex on a prominent hill with madrasas for education, hospitals for the sick, and imarets feeding thousands daily. Mehmed invested in infrastructure to revive the city. Topkapi Palace, commenced in 1459, became the imperial residence, a sprawling labyrinth of courtyards, audience halls with gilded ceilings, treasuries filled with gold and emeralds, and the harem where sultans' families resided, guarded by black eunuchs from Africa. Mehmed's conquests continued. Serbia fell in 1459 after the siege of Smederevo, Bosnia in 1463, with mass conversions to Islam among Bogomil heretics, and Albania submitted after the death of resistance leader Skanderbeg in 1468. In 1475, Mehmed conquered the Genoese colony of Kaffa in Crimea, allying with the Tatar Khans of the Golden Horde's remnant, securing Black Sea trade in furs, amber, and slaves. He invaded Italy in 1480, capturing Otranto in Apulia, with a fleet crossing the Adriatic, shocking Europe. But his death in 1481, possibly from poison, halted further advances. With Otranto evacuated, Mehmed patronized the arts, inviting Italian painter Gentile Bellini to paint his portrait, collecting ancient Greek manuscripts for his library, and fostering a court where scholars debated philosophy and poets composed in Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. His reign transformed the Ottoman state into a true empire, with a centralized bureaucracy and a standing army that intimidated rivals across continents. Bayezid II, succeeding his father in 1481 amid Janissary support over his brother Cem, who fled to Rhodes and was used as a pawn by the Knights Hospitaller and the Pope to deter Ottoman attacks, ruled with a conservative and pious approach until 1512. Bayezid welcomed Sephardic Jews expelled from Spain in 1492 following the Alhambra decree, granting them refuge in Istanbul, Salonika, and Izmir, where they established thriving communities with synagogues like the Arida. in Balat. These Jewish settlers brought advanced skills in printing, medicine, banking, and craftsmanship, boosting the empire's economy and cultural diversity as their presses produced Hebrew texts and their merchants traded with Europe. Yazid's military campaigns were measured but strategic. Wars with the Mamluks from 1485 to 1491 over border disputes in Cilicia ended in a stalemate but gained valuable territories along the Mediterranean coast, strengthening naval bases. Naval conflicts with Venice from 1499 to 1503 saw Ottoman fleets under Admiral Kemal Reis capture Lepanto and other Ionian islands, using superior galleys equipped with bronze cannons to outmaneuver Venetian ships. Bayezid built the Bayezid II Mosque in Istanbul, a graceful structure with cascading domes and slender minarets, and supported Sufi orders like the Bektashis, whose mystical teachings influenced the Janissaries and fostered loyalty among troops. Earthquakes, such as the devastating 1509 tremor that damaged Istanbul's walls and killed thousands, tested his reign, but Bayezid's piety, earning him the nickname Veli, or the Saint, and administrative reforms like standardizing weights and measures for fair trade maintained stability. Daily life under Bayezid reflected a growing cosmopolitan empire. Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, established in 1461, buzzed with merchants haggling over Persian silks, Indian spices, and Baltic amber. Artisans crafted intricate silver jewelry and glazed Iznik tiles, and coffee houses, emerging as social hubs, hosted poets reciting verses and storytellers narrating tales of conquest. Women embroidered silk garments with gold thread. Men forged Damascus steel blades in smoky workshops, and children attended medreses, memorizing Quranic verses or learning calligraphy. Festivals featured tightrope walkers, fire eaters, and musicians playing saz, drawing crowds to open squares lit by oil lamps. Internal strife marked Bayezid's later years as his sons Korkut, Ahmed, and Selim vied for succession. Selim, governor of Trabzon, rebelled in 1511, supported by Janissaries, frustrated with Bayezid's pacifism. Forced to abdicate in 1512, Bayezid died shortly after, possibly poisoned, leaving the throne to Selim I, a ruler whose ferocity would reshape the empire. Selim the known as Yavuz, or the Grim, for his stern demeanor and ruthless decisions, ruled from 1512 to 1520, focusing on eastern threats and territorial expansion. To counter the rising Safavid Empire in Iran, which promoted Shia Islam and threatened Ottoman Sunni dominance, Selim launched a brutal campaign against Alevi Shia sympathizers in Anatolia, massacring or deporting thousands to prevent internal rebellion. His campaign culminated in the Battle of Chaldiran in 1514, where Ottoman gunpowder weapons, muskets and cannons, manned by Janissaries, decimated Shah Ismail Waf's cavalry, capturing Tabriz briefly and annexing eastern Anatolia and Kurdistan, securing vital mountain passes for trade and defense. Turning south, Selim targeted the Mamluk Sultanate, a powerful rival controlling Egypt, Syria, and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. At the Battle of Majd in 1516, Ottoman artillery and disciplined troops routed Mamluk lancers, killing Sultan al-Ghawri and seizing Damascus. The campaign continued to the Battle of Ridania in 1517, where Selim's forces stormed Cairo, overcoming fierce resistance, and executed the last Mamluk Sultan, Tuman Bey, by hanging him at the city gates. This conquest doubled the empire's size, adding Syria, Egypt, and Arabia to its domains, and Selim assumed the title of Caliph from the last Abbasid Caliph in Cairo, becoming the spiritual leader of Sunni Islam and protector of the holy sites. Control over the Red Sea brought immense wealth from the spice trade, with ports like Jeddah bustling with merchants unloading pepper, cloves, and saffron from India. Selim's death in 1520 from anthrax left a vastly expanded Sunni-dominant empire to his son Suleiman, poised for its golden age. Suleiman, first known as the Magnificent in the West, for his grandeur, and Kanuni, or the lawgiver, in the East, for his legal reforms, ruled from 1520 to 1566, representing the Ottoman Empire at its zenith. Inheriting a robust state with a treasury filled by Selim's conquests, Suleiman launched immediate campaigns to expand further. In 1521, he captured Belgrade after a fierce bombardment, securing the key to Central Europe and opening Hungary to Ottoman advance. The following year, he besieged Rhodes, a Mediterranean stronghold held by the Knights Hospitaller, who had repelled previous attacks. After a 6-month siege, with Ottoman cannons pounding the fortified walls and sappers tunneling beneath, Rhodes surrendered in 1522, and Suleiman allowed the knights to leave honorably, consolidating naval control. The Battle of Mohacs in 1526 was a defining moment. Suleiman's 7,000 troops, equipped with muskets and artillery, annihilated the Hungarian army in just 2 hours, killing King Louis II and scattering his forces. This victory annexed central Hungary, with Suleiman installing John Zapolya as a vassal ruler in Transylvania, creating a buffer against the Habsburgs. The Siege of Vienna in 1529, with 12,000 troops, aimed to strike at the heart of Europe, but failed due to heavy rains, stretched supply lines, and staunch Austrian defenses. A second attempt in 1532 was diverted to defend Hungary, but the campaign established the empire's western frontier. Eastward, Suleiman campaigned against the Safavids, capturing Baghdad in 1534 after a grueling march, securing Mesopotamia and access to the Persian Gulf, with trade routes bringing pearls and silk to Ottoman markets. Naval supremacy defined Suleiman's reign, led by Admiral Hayreddin Barbarossa, a former pirate who became a strategic genius. Barbarossa's fleet dominated the Mediterranean, sacking Italian coasts and defeating a Holy League fleet at Preveza in 1538, capturing galleys and securing Ottoman control over sea lanes. An alliance with Francis I against the Habsburgs brought French ambassadors to Istanbul, where they dined on gold plates in Topkapi's halls. The 1565 siege of Malta failed against the Knights Hospitalers fortifications, but victories at Djerba in 1560 and Tripoli in 1551 expanded Ottoman influence in North Africa. Domestically, Suleiman codified laws in the Qanunnameh, harmonizing Sharia with sultanic edicts to regulate taxes, criminal justice, and land tenure, administered by qadis in courts with wooden lattices for privacy. He built the Süleymaniye Mosque complex in Istanbul, designed by architect Mimar Sinan, a masterpiece with soaring domes, slender minarets, and a sprawling complex of medreses, hospitals, and imarets feeding the poor. Suleiman's wife, Hürrem Sultan, a former Ruthenian slave, became a powerful influence, advising him through letters during campaigns and funding charitable works like fountains and schools. The court was a cultural hub. Poets like Baki composed divan poetry. Miniaturists illustrated manuscripts like the Suleiman Nam with vivid battle scenes, and calligraphers crafted Qurans in elegant Naskh script. Daily life under Suleiman reflected the empire's diversity. Istanbul's streets bustled with merchants from Arabia, sailors from Algiers, and scholars from Persia. Coffee houses hosted debates on philosophy and poetry, and festivals featured whirling dervishes, jugglers, and storytellers. Women embroidered intricate patterns on kaftans, men forged silver in workshops, and children played with spinning tops in courtyards. The harem, guarded by eunuchs, was a world of intrigue, with Hürrem maneuvering to secure succession for her sons. Suleiman's later years were marred by tragedy. He executed his son Mustafa in 1553 on suspicions of treason, prompted by Hürrem, and his son Bayezid in 1559 after a rebellion. Suleiman died in 1566 during the Sigitvar siege in Hungary. His death concealed to secure victory, his body embalmed for return to Istanbul. His era left an empire stretching from Persia to Algeria, Yemen to Hungary, with a population of 15 million, a cultural and military pinnacle. Suleiman's son, Selim II, nicknamed the Sot for his love of wine, ruled from 1566 to 1574, relying heavily on his Grand Vizier, Sokollu Mehmed Pasha, a Devshirme recruit of Serbian origin, whose administrative genius maintained stability. Selim's major achievement was the conquest of Cyprus from 1570 to 1571. capturing the Venetian stronghold of Famagusta after a brutal siege, despite fierce resistance from defenders who fought from fortified walls. This victory provoked the Holy League, Venice, Spain, and the papacy, whose fleet, led by Don John of Austria, destroyed 200 Ottoman galleys at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, a significant naval defeat that dented Ottoman prestige, though the fleet was rebuilt within a year. Selim's attempt to capture Astrakhan from Russia in 1569 failed due to harsh winters and Cossack raids, but campaigns secured Yemen and Tunisia, strengthening Red Sea and North African control. Selim built the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, another of Sinan's masterpieces. Its octagonal dome and towering minarets, a testament to Ottoman architectural prowess. Daily life continued vibrantly. Coffee houses spread across cities, serving as hubs for chess games and political discussions. Artisans crafted glazed ceramics, and markets sold dates, olives, and saffron. Murad III, ruling from 1574 to 1595, faced economic challenges as silver from the Americas flooded markets, causing inflation and straining the treasury. His campaigns against the Safavids from 1578 to 1590, led by viziers, gained Azerbaijan and Georgia, but the costs were immense, with soldiers paid in debased coins sparking unrest. The harem grew influential, with Murad's mother, Nurbanu Sultan, and wife, Safiye Sultan, a Venetian by origin, shaping policy through gifts of jewels and diplomatic correspondence. Murad patronized sciences, funding astronomer Taqiyuddin's observatory in Istanbul, though it was destroyed after clerics deemed it heretical following a plague. Cultural life flourished. Poets wrote in Persian and Turkish, miniaturists depicted court scenes, and women embroidered silk with floral motifs sold in bustling bazaars. Mehmed III, ruling from 1595 to 1603, ascended amid controversy, executing 19 brothers to secure the throne, a practice that shocked even Ottoman courtiers. The Long War with Austria from 1593 to 1606 saw the capture of Aegea in 1596, but the Battle of Carestes was a Pyrrhic victory, with heavy losses on both sides. Mehmed's mother, Safiye's influence and corruption sparked a Sipahi cavalry revolt, demanding reforms. Daily life under Mehmed saw growing urban sophistication. Istanbul's population swelled to 400,000, with markets selling coffee from Yemen, silk from Bursa, and spices from India. Artisans crafted intricate clocks, and festivals featured acrobats and poets reciting under lantern-lit tents. Ahmed Vs, ruling from 1603 to 1617, ended fratricide, confining princes to the cafes, cage in Topkapi, a gilded prison that kept them alive but isolated, preventing rebellion but limiting their experience. He built the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, its 20,000 Iznik tiles shimmering with blue and turquoise floral designs, facing Hagia Sophia as a symbol of Ottoman piety. His reign was plagued by plagues, fires, and Jesuit intrigues from Europe, but cultural patronage continued, with poets and scholars thriving in medreses. Daily life included coffeehouse debates, where men discussed politics over tiny cups of bitter brew, and women gathered in hammams to share stories and songs. Osman II, ruling from 1618 to 1622, sought to reform the increasingly corrupt Janissaries, whose power had grown unchecked. His campaign against Poland at Chotin in 1621 failed to achieve decisive victory, and his plans to replace Janissaries with a new army provoked a revolt in 1622, leading to his murder, the first regicide in Ottoman history. Murad IV, ascending in 1623 at age 11, ruled under the regency of his mother, Kosum Sultan, amid chaos. Taking power as a teenager, he restored order with ruthless measures, executing rebels and banning coffee and tobacco to curb dissent, enforcing rules with spies disguised as merchants. His conquest of Baghdad in 1638 from the Safavids, after a grueling siege, secured Mesopotamia, with the Treaty of Zuhab setting a lasting border with Iran. Murad's court patronized poets and historians, while daily life saw soldiers drilling in barracks, women weaving carpets, and markets trading furs and spices. Ibrahim, ruling from 1640 to 1648, was nicknamed Delhi, or the Mad, for his erratic behavior and obsession with luxury, demanding furs and amber that bankrupted the treasury. His deposition and execution in a coup marked a low point, with Janissaries and ulama seizing power. Mehmed IV, ascending in 1648 at age 6, ruled under the regency of Kosum and Turhan Sultan, whose rivalry culminated in Kosum's murder in 1651. The Koprulu viziers, Mehmed and his son Fazil Ahmed, revived fortunes, crushing Anatolian rebels and conquering Crete in 1669, after a 24-year siege of Candia, a major victory against Venice. The 1683 siege of Vienna, led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa, aimed to capture the Habsburg capital with 200,000 troops, but failed when Polish King John Sobieski's cavalry charge relieved the city, routing Ottoman forces. The subsequent Holy League Wars saw losses of Hungary and Morea, with the 1699 Treaty of Karlowitz marking the first major territorial defeat, ceding vast European lands. Ahmed III, ruling from 1703 to 1730, ushered in the Tulip period, a time of cultural flourishing inspired by European styles. Tulip gardens bloomed in Istanbul's palaces, with Sadabad Palace mirroring Versailles' elegance, and the first printing press by Ibrahim Mutafarrika in 1727 produced Turkish books, spreading knowledge. The period ended with the 1730 Patrona Halil revolt, sparked by economic hardship and resentment of extravagance, forcing Ahmed's abdication. Mahmud thus, ruling until 1754, suppressed the revolt and regained Belgrade in 1739 from Austria, but wars with Russia weakened the empire. Osman III's brief reign from 1754 to 1757 was marked by paranoia, while Mustafa III, ruling until 1774, modernized artillery but lost Crimea to Russia in the 1768 to 1774 war, with the Treaty of Kuchuk-Kainaji allowing Russian ships in the Black Sea, a humiliating blow. Abdul Hamid thus, ruling from 1774 to 1789, faced Russian annexation of Crimea in 1783, reforming education to counter decline. Suleiman III, ruling from 1789 to 1807, introduced the Nizam-e-Sedid modern army, inspired by French reforms. But Janissary opposition led to his deposition and murder in 1808. Mustafa IV, a Janissary puppet, ruled briefly before being deposed. Mahmud II, ruling from 1808 to 1839, avenged Selim by abolishing the Janissaries in 1826, the auspicious incident, massacring thousands and introducing a conscript army with European uniforms. Greek independence from 1821 to 1830, aided by Britain, France, and Russia, marked further losses, and Egyptian Viceroy Muhammad Ali's rebellion in 1831 nearly captured Istanbul, halted only by Russian intervention. Abdulmajid I, ruling from 1839 to 1861, launched the Tanzimat reforms, beginning with the 1839 Gulhan Edict, which promised equality for all subjects, and the 1856 Islahat Edict, extending rights to non-Muslims. The Crimean War of 1853 to 1856, allied with Britain and France against Russia, secured a victory, but increased debt, with the Ottoman Bank founded to manage loans. Abdulmajid built the Dolmabahce Palace, a European-style residence with crystal chandeliers and marble halls. Abdulaziz, ruling from 1861 to 1876, toured Europe in 1867, modernizing the navy, but financial mismanagement led to bankruptcy in 1875. Murad V's three-month reign in 1876 ended in deposition due to mental illness. Abdul Hamid II, ascending in 1876 amid economic and political turmoil, introduced the empire's first constitution, establishing a parliament and promising equal rights to modernize governance and appease European critics. However, the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878, where Russian armies advanced to within miles of Istanbul, resulted in catastrophic losses. Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro gained independence at the Congress of Berlin in 1878, and Britain assumed control of Cyprus. The war's devastation and internal unrest led Abdul Hamid to suspend the constitution, ruling autocratically to restore stability. He focused on infrastructure, overseeing the completion of the Hejaz Railway by 1908, a monumental project linking Damascus to Medina, its steam locomotives winding through desert sands to facilitate pilgrimage and trade, strengthening ties with the Arab provinces. Tensions with Armenian communities seeking reforms and greater autonomy escalated into violent clashes from 1894 to 1896, with thousands killed in riots and reprisals, drawing international condemnation and straining Ottoman-European relations. By 1908, the Young Turks, a reformist movement of military officers and intellectuals, forced Abdul Hamid to restore the constitution and parliament, ushering in a brief era of constitutional rule. His attempted counter-coup in 1909, backed by conservative factions, failed amid public and military opposition, leading to his deposition and exile to Salonika, ending a 33-year reign marked by modernization efforts and controversy. Mehmed Fiv, ascending in 1909 at age 64, ruled as a figurehead under the Young Turks' Committee of Union and Progress, which pushed for modernization through education, railways, and military reforms, but faced mounting crises. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 were a disaster. A coalition of Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, and Montenegro expelled Ottoman forces from most of Europe, losing Albania, Macedonia, and Thrace, shrinking the empire to Istanbul's doorstep. The wars exposed military weaknesses as outdated tactics failed against modern Balkan armies, and ethnic tensions flared in the lost territories. Entering World War I in 1914 alongside Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans achieved a stunning victory at Gallipoli in 1915, where Mustafa Kemal's strategic defense repelled Allied landings, saving Istanbul from invasion. However, the Arab Revolt of 1916, led by Sharif Hussein of Mecca, with British support and T.E. Lawrence's guidance, eroded control over Arabia as Bedouin fighters disrupted Ottoman supply lines. The forced deportations of Armenians in 1915, amid fears of rebellion, resulted in massive loss of life during marches through harsh terrains, leaving a tragic and controversial scar on the empire's legacy, with estimates of deaths ranging widely and debated fiercely to this day. The empire's defeat in 1918 led to the Mudros Armistice and the 1920 Treaty of Sèvres, aimed to partition Ottoman lands among Allied powers, awarding territories to Greece, Armenia, and colonial powers. Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, emerged as a nationalist leader, rejecting Sèvres and rallying forces in the Turkish War of Independence from 1919 to 1923. His victories at Sakarya in 1921 and Dumlupinar in 1922 drove out Greek, Armenian, and French forces liberating Anatolia. The 1923 Treaty of Lausanne recognized the Republic of Turkey, establishing modern borders. The Sultanate was abolished in 1922, with Mehmed VI exiled, and the Caliphate followed in 1924, officially ending the Ottoman Empire after 6 centuries. The Ottoman Empire's remarkable 600-year endurance rested on its ability to adapt and innovate. The Ghazi spirit of early conquests evolved into a professional army, with janissaries wielding muskets and cannons revolutionizing warfare. The millet system granted autonomy to Christians, Jews, and other minorities, fostering loyalty through religious freedom while collecting jizya taxes to fund the state. Control over trade routes from the Silk Road, bringing Chinese porcelain to Red Sea ports, importing Indian spices, fueled economic prosperity, with Istanbul's Grand Bazaar a global marketplace. Cultural patronage produced architectural marvels like Sinan's 300 mosques, poetry in multiple languages, and miniature paintings capturing court life. Strategic marriages and diplomacy balanced rival powers, while the Devshirman system ensured a meritocratic bureaucracy, drawing talent from diverse subjects. Daily life was vibrant. Farmers tilled fertile fields, artisans crafted intricate tiles, and festivals united communities with music and dance. Decline came from internal corruption, janissary overreach, and the rise of European industrialization and nationalism, but the empire's adaptability delayed its fall. In 2025, the Ottoman legacy endures in Istanbul's skyline. Hagia Sophia, reconverted to a mosque in 2020, and Topkapi's treasures draw millions. Turkish cuisine, from baklava to kebabs, reflects centuries of cultural fusion, while dramas like Magnificent Century captivate global audiences with tales of Suleiman and Hurrem. Hammams offer steamy relaxation, and calligraphy adorns modern art. As we close, may these stories of a resilient empire, woven from the threads of conquest and culture, bring restful dreams under a starry Bosphorus sky. Good night, until we meet again beneath the stars.